The dust on Castor 9 tasted like rust and broken promises. Jessa Morvan spat a reddish glob onto the cracked earth and adjusted the plasma restraints on her belt. 3 months. 3 months of chasing shadows across from moons and 6 trading posts. And finally, the trail had gone hot. He's in there, her contact. A twitchy information broker named Fen whispered from beside the gutted transport shell they crouched behind. Second level. Third compartment from the lift shaft. Jessa's fingers traced the scar that ran from her left ear to her collarbone. A nervous habit she'd never broken. Her sister Carrie had touched that same spot the last time Jessa saw her, right before she vanished into the belly of a smuggler's ship 5 years ago. Every criminal Jessa caught was a step closer to finding the network that had taken Carrie. Every monster she caged was one less predator in the galaxy dot, and this one was special. Dante Cross, the name alone made her blood simmer. The man who'd murdered 300 souls when he'd blown Kepler Station into cosmic debris. Men, women, children all atomized in an instant because of whatever sick experiment he'd been running. The warrant on him had been the largest she'd ever seen. Enough credits to buy her own ship and fund her search for a decade. You sure it's him? Jessa asked, checking the charge on her neural stunner. Positive. Matches the biometric scan. He's not even trying to hide anymore. Fen's eyes darted nervously. But Jessa, listen, people are saying things about him. Saying he's not normal. That he can do things. Everyone's dangerous when they're cornered. Jessa stood, her lean frame casting a long shadow in the setting binary suns. Stay here. If I'm not back in 20 minutes, send the coordinates to the marshals. You're going in alone? Jessa, don't be. But she was already moving. Her boots silent on the metal walkway leading to the derelict Hab complex. This part of Castor 9 had been abandoned after the mining companies pulled out, leaving behind a warren of rusted structures perfect for hiding. The frontier moon attracted two kinds of people, those running from something and those hunting them. Jessa had long since stopped caring which category she fell into. The complex's entry hatch groaned as she forced it open. Inside, emergency lighting flickered weakly, painting everything in sickly yellow. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but her hands stayed steady. She'd done this dance before: cleared buildings, cornered runners, face-down armed desperados twice her size. But something felt different this time. The air itself seemed to hum with a frequency she felt in her teeth. Each step deeper into the complex made her skin prickle with awareness. She passed abandoned living quarters, their doors hanging open like mouths frozen in screams. Personal effects lay scattered: someone's child's toy, a meditation crystal, a family photo warped with moisture damage. Second level. Her boots clanged softly on the metal stairs. The stunner felt slick in her palm, despite the complex's dry air. Jessa's breathing steadied as training took over, pushing emotion down into the locked box where she kept everything that might make her hesitate. Third compartment from the lift shaft. The door was closed but unsealed. Through the grimy porthole window, she could see a figure sitting on the floor, back against the far wall. He wasn't moving, wasn't even looking toward the door. Jessa keyed the entry panel, and the door slid open with a pneumatic hiss. "Dante Cross," she said, her voice hard as vacuum-forged steel. "Stand up slowly. Hands where I can see them." The man looked up, and Jessa felt something in her chest constrict unexpectedly. The wanted posters hadn't prepared her for the reality of him. He was younger than she'd imagined, maybe 30 standard years, with dark hair that fell across hollow eyes. But it was his expression that made her finger hesitate on the stunner's trigger. He looked utterly, devastatingly broken. "I know why you're here," he said quietly. His voice was rough, like he hadn't used it in days. "I won't fight you." Smart choice. Jessa moved into the room, keeping the weapon trained on his center mass. "On your feet, hands behind your head." He complied with the slow, careful movements of someone who'd given up. As he stood, Jessa noticed he was trembling not from fear, but from something else. Something that made the air around him shimmer slightly, like heat waves off sun-baked stone. "Whatever you think I did," he said as she approached with the restraints. "Whatever they told you, 300 people. Cross, 300 lives snuffed out because of you. Save your excuses for the tribunal." She grabbed his wrist, and the moment her skin touched his, everything changed. The air ignited, that not with fire, but with something stranger, light that wasn't light. Energy that sang through her nervous system like music turned visible. Jessa gasped, trying to pull away, but the connection held. Images flooded her mind, not memories, but emotions so raw they had color. Grief the shade of midnight, loneliness like silver threads, and beneath it all, a love so profound it ached, love for people lost, for a life destroyed, for chances that would never come again. Then she saw it, the truth he carried like a weight around his soul, the explosion, but not caused by him, caused to save him. Someone else's sacrifice, someone else's choice. The vision released her, and she staggered back, the stunner clattering to the floor. Dante swayed on his feet, tears streaming down his face, and above them, impossibly, inexplicably, the rusted metal ceiling began to shimmer with colors that shouldn't exist. Blues that sang, golds that whispered, purples that tasted like sorrow made beautiful. What? Jess's voice failed her. What are you? I'm sorry, he whispered, and his tears fell like stars. I can't always control it. When the emotions are too strong, it just happens. The colors spread across the ceiling like aurora borealis trapped indoors, reflecting in the tears that now, traitorously, pricked at Jess's own eyes. Everything she'd believed about this man, this monster, wavered like a mirage, and somewhere in the beauty of that impossible sky, her certainty began to crack. The colors faded slowly, like a sunset bleeding into night, until only the sickly yellow emergency lights remained. Dante Cross sank back against the wall, exhausted, his face pale and slick with sweat. Jessa stood frozen, her stunner still on the floor between them. Her world tilted on an axis she couldn't name. Pick it up, Dante said quietly, gesturing weakly toward the weapon. You came here to do a job. Do it. But Jess's legs wouldn't move. Her mind kept replaying what she'd seen, felt in that impossible moment of connection. The grief had been real. The innocence had been real. And if those were real, then everything she'd believed about Kepler Station was a lie. Tell me what happened, she heard herself say. The truth. Dante laughed, but it was a hollow sound that echoed in the empty compartment. Why would you believe me? No one else did. Because I saw. Jessa stopped, trying to find words for something that had no words. I felt something. When I touched you. Show me again. No. His response was immediate, almost panicked. He pulled his hands against his chest protectively. I can't control it. What you saw was just the surface. If I let you in deeper, if I actually try. He shook his head. The last person I tried to show, I put them in a coma for 3 days. The emotions, the memories, they're too intense. The human brain isn't meant to experience feelings that concentrated. Jessa finally moved, but instead of picking up her weapon, she crossed to the wall opposite him and slid down to sit, mirroring his position. The practical part of her brain screamed that this was insane, that she was throwing away the biggest bounty of her career, but the part that had touched his truth couldn't walk away. Then just tell me. With words, Dante studied her for a long moment, his dark eyes searching hers for something, sincerity, maybe, or the possibility of being believed. Finally, he began. I was an environmental systems engineer on Kepler Station. Nothing special. I calibrated life support, fixed air recyclers, made sure everyone could breathe. His voice was soft, distant, like he was looking at someone else's life. But I was also in love. Her name was Nora Vale. The way he said her name made Jess's chest ache. It carried the weight of entire worlds. Nora was a geneticist. Brilliant. Beautiful. She saw patterns in DNA the way artists see colors. We were going to leave the station together, start a clinic on one of the garden worlds. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. We had names picked out for our future children. 3 of them. Stupid, right? Counting children before they existed, not stupid, Jessa said quietly, thinking of all the futures she'd planned with Carrie before her sister vanished. The station administrator was a man named Henrik Voss. To everyone else, he was respectable, charitable. But Nora discovered what he was really doing, using the station's medical facilities to experiment on unwilling subjects, genetic manipulation, consciousness transfer, trying to extend his life by stealing bodies from people he considered disposable. Dante's hands clenched into fists. Street kids, drifters, people no one would miss. Jessa felt ice form in her stomach. She knew men like that existed. The people who'd taken Carrie were the same breed of monster. Those who saw human beings as resources to exploit. Nora compiled evidence. She was going to expose him. But Voss found out. Daddy's voice cracked. He sent his security team to our quarters. I was on shift, calibrating the carbon scrubbers in Section 7. By the time I got the emergency alert, it was too late. They had already taken her to his private lab. He stopped, breathing hard, and the air around him began to shimmer again. Jessa tensed, but he closed his eyes and the effect faded. I tried to stop them, broke into the lab. But Voss had guards, and I was just, he laughed bitterly, just an engineer with a wrench. They beat me unconscious. When I woke up, I was strapped to a medical table next to Nora. She was still alive, but barely. Voss had been trying to transfer his consciousness into her body, but something had gone wrong. She was dying. Tears began streaming down Daddy's face again, but this time he seemed unaware of them. Above, the ceiling started to shimmer with soft blues and grays. She looked at me. Even dying, even in that much pain, she looked at me and said, "I love you. I'm sorry." And then she did something, triggered something in me that even I didn't know existed. Some latent genetic mutation, maybe, or something Voss's experiments had activated. I don't know. But suddenly I could feel everything she felt. Every emotion, every memory. Her love for me poured into my soul like liquid fire. The colors on the ceiling intensified, swirling into patterns that looked almost like faces, like hands reaching for each other. And then she used the last of her strength to overload the containment field on Voss's experimental reactor. She wanted to stop him from ever hurting anyone again. But she also wanted to save me. She channeled all that energy, all that destruction, away from where I was. Used her own body as a shield. Daddy's voice dropped to a whisper. The explosion took the entire station. She saved my life and made me look like a mass murderer with the same choice. Jessa felt tears on her own cheeks now. How did you survive? The energy she channeled into me, it changed me, protected me. When I woke up in the debris field, I was in an escape pod I don't remember getting to. Emergency services found me 3 hours later. I tried to tell them what happened, but I had no proof. All of Nora's evidence was destroyed. And I had these abilities. I could make people feel things, see things. Every time I tried to explain, emotions would overwhelm me, and the colors would come, and everyone thought I was using some kind of weapon or trick. He looked at her directly then, and Jessa saw the truth written in every line of his face. They called me a monster, said I'd killed all those people for some insane experiment. The real evidence, Voss's body in his private lab, the experimental equipment, it was all vaporized. Just my word against the record of a respected administrator. So I ran. He gestured at the derelict compartment around them. Been running for 2 years. But I'm tired, Jessa. I'm so tired of running. Of being alone with her memories. Of carrying this weight. The colors above them had formed into something that looked almost like two figures embracing. Then slowly dissolved into rain, beautiful, impossible rain that vanished before it could touch them. Jessa sat in silence, processing everything. Her instincts as a bounty tracker wired with what her heart had felt in that moment of connection. She thought of Carrie, of how she'd feel if someone accused her of being complicit in her own kidnapping. How she'd feel if no one believed the truth. "I believe you," she finally said. Daddy's eyes widened. "Why? Because I've spent 5 years hunting monsters. Real ones. Men who take people and break them for profit. I know what evil looks like." She met his gaze. "And when I touched you, I didn't feel evil. I felt love, grief, loss, but not evil. So what now?" He asked. "You still have a job to do, a bounty to collect." Jessa looked at her stunner, still lying on the floor. Then she looked at Dante, this broken, grieving man who'd lost everything and been branded a monster for surviving it. She thought about the hunter she'd been when she entered this room, and the person she was now, sitting in the reflected glow of someone else's tears. "Now," she said slowly, "we figure out how to prove you're innocent. Because if Henrik Voss had equipment for consciousness transfer, he had funding, partners, people who helped him. And people like that don't just disappear. Hope flickered in Dante's eyes, fragile as starlight. "You'd help me. Risk your career, your reputation?" Jessa picked up her stunner and holstered it. Then she stood and extended her hand to him, not as a captor to prisoner, but as something else. Something neither of them had words for yet. "I've been hunting the wrong monsters," she said. "Time to find the real ones." When Dante took her hand, the touch was electric but controlled. Above them, the ceiling bloomed with dawn colors, pinks and golds, and the soft lavender of new beginnings. And for the first time in 2 years, Dante Cross smiled like he remembered what hope tasted like. Mira Stellan didn't believe in fate, karma, or any of the spiritual garbage that frontier mystics peddled to desperate colonists. She believed in 3 things: fuel costs, payload margins, and the crushing weight of debt that would put her in a labor camp if she didn't clear it within 6 months, which was why she'd agreed to this job without asking too many questions. "Coordinates locked in," she muttered, running through pre-flight on the Wandering Star, her battered but reliable transport vessel. The ship had seen better decades. Hull patches covered half the starboard side. The climate control worked at half capacity, and the navigation computer had a glitch that made it swear in 3 different languages. But it was hers for now, until the creditors decided otherwise. The job was simple: pick up a high-value prisoner from Castor 9, transport him to the core worlds for trial, collect 40,000 credits, enough to clear her debts with room to spare. The client had been vague about the prisoner's crimes, but Mira had learned not to care. Caring complicated things, and complications didn't pay. Her calm crackled. "Transport vessel Wandering Star, this is your cargo. We're approaching the dock." Mira frowned at the voice, female, young. Not what she'd expected from the Marshal Service. "Copy that. Bay doors opening. Come aboard." She watched through the cargo bay camera as 2 figures entered, a lean woman with a scar on her neck and a man in restraints, who moved like every step hurt his soul. But it was the way the woman touched his elbow, gentle and guiding rather than forceful, that made Mira's instincts prickle. Something wasn't right here. Mira met them at the cargo bay door, her hand resting casually on the plasma pistol at her hip. Up close, she could see the woman Jessa. According to the brief, had eyes that had seen too much and forgotten how to look away. The prisoner was worse, hollow-cheeked, exhausted, but there was something in his expression that didn't fit the profile of a mass murderer. "You're late," Mira said, because it was true and because she wanted to see how they'd react. "We had complications," Jessa replied evenly. "Can we get moving? The sooner we reach the core worlds, the better." Funny thing about that, Mira crossed her arms. "My client was very specific about when and where to deliver this package. But you're not my client. You're supposedly a bounty hunter who hired my services through a third party. So before we go anywhere, I want to know what I'm really transporting." Jessa and the prisoner Dante Cross, the manifest set, exchanged a look that told Mira everything she needed to know. Whatever this was, it wasn't a standard prisoner transfer. "The truth is complicated," Jessa started. "Then uncomplicate it." Mira's hand tightened on her pistol. "Because if this is some kind of setup, if you're planning to hijack my ship or double-cross the wrong people, I will space both of you and tell everyone you tried to take over mid-flight. Self-defense. Clean and legal. I didn't kill those people on Kepler Station," Dante said quietly. His voice was rough but sincere. "I'm trying to prove my innocence, but the people who framed me are powerful. Jess is helping me get to someone who might have evidence." Mira studied him. She'd transported enough criminals to recognize the difference between lies and desperation. This man was desperate, but he wasn't lying. "So you're not actually turning him in?" She said to Jessa. "No, but I am paying you the full 40,000. Jessa pulled out a credit chip. "Half now, half when we reach Novo Terra. All I need is transport and discretion." 40,000 credits. Mira looked at the chip like it was a snake that might bite. Money that clean was dangerous. But money was money, and her debts didn't care where it came from. "Fine. But any trouble, any indication this is going to blow back on me, and our agreement ends." Out the airlock, she snatched the chip. "Strap in. We launch in 10. 3 days into the journey, Mira realized she'd made a terrible mistake. Not because of violence or hijacking, nothing like that. Worse, she was starting to care. It began small. The first night, she'd caught Dante sitting in the observation deck, staring at the stars with an expression of such profound loneliness it made her chest ache. The second day, she'd overheard Jessa talking to him in the cargo hold, sharing the story of her missing sister with a vulnerability that made Mira remember why she'd stopped letting people get close. And then there was the incident with the colors. Mira had been running diagnostics in engineering when she'd heard Jessa cry out. She'd rushed to the crew quarters to find Dante on his knees, tears streaming down his face, and the entire room filled with light that shouldn't exist, swirling auroras of emotion made visible. Jessa had been holding him, whispering that it was okay, that he was safe. What the hell is that? Mira had demanded. It's what they used to convict him, Jessa had said, not letting go of Dante. They called it a weapon, but it's not. It's just his grief, his love, everything he feels made manifest. And Mira, who prided herself on cynicism, had watched those impossible colors and felt something crack in the walls she'd built around her heart. Now, on the fourth day, she found herself in the galley making 3 portions of her grandmother's stew recipe. Instead of eating ration packs alone, found herself asking questions about Kepler Station and Henrik Voss and the conspiracy that had destroyed Daddy's life. Found herself angry on behalf of 2 strangers who'd stumbled onto her ship, carrying hope like it was something precious. You're getting soft, she muttered to herself, stirring the pot with more force than necessary. Talking to yourself is the first sign of space madness, Jessa said from the doorway, a tired smile on her face. Mira jumped, nearly spilling the stew. Don't sneak up on people on their own ship. Sorry. Jessa moved into the galley, drawn by the smell. Is that real food? Actual vegetables? Don't get excited. It's mostly protein paste with vegetable flavoring, but my grandmother's recipe makes it taste almost real. Mira ladled out 3 bowls. Where's your prisoner? He's not my prisoner, and he's resting. The episodes take a lot out of him. Jessa accepted a bowl gratefully. Thank you for this, for all of this. I know we've complicated your life. Mira sat across from her, studying the younger woman. Why are you doing this? You had the bounty, 40,000 credits in your pocket. Why throw it away for someone you just met? Jessa was quiet for a moment, turning the spoon in her hands. 5 years ago, my sister Carrie vanished, taken by traffickers. I've been hunting them ever since, taking bounties on anyone connected to that network. I told myself I was making the galaxy safer, but really, she looked up, her eyes bright. Really, I was just trying to control something, to punish someone for what I couldn't prevent. And Cross, when I touched him, when I felt what he'd been through losing someone he loved, being powerless to stop it, watching the world brand him as evil for surviving. Jess's voice cracked. I saw myself, what I could become if I kept choosing vengeance over truth. So I decided to choose differently. Mira felt something twist in her chest. She thought of her own choices, the debts she'd accumulated trying to save a lover who hadn't wanted to be saved, the years she'd spent running from connection, because connection meant vulnerability. That's either very brave or very stupid, she said finally. Probably both. Jessa smiled. What about you? You could have turned us in, collected a reward for exposing a fugitive. Why didn't you? Mira looked down at her stew, at the cheap protein paste made palatable by memory and care. Because I'm tired of only caring about survival. Because, she hesitated, then pushed forward. Because 3 years ago, my partner, her name was Lena, got sick. Rare neurological disease. The treatment was expensive, and I went into debt trying to pay for it. But the company that made the cure, they kept raising the price. Every time I scraped together enough, it went up. By the time I realized they were doing it deliberately, keeping people sick to maximize profit, Lena was gone. I'm sorry, Jessa said softly. The company was a subsidiary of Voss Medical Technologies. Mira met Jessa's eyes. Your Henrik Voss didn't just experiment on street kids. He ran a dozen legitimate businesses that hurt people legally. So when you told me what he did, what he was, she shrugged, but her hands were shaking. I guess I wanted to believe that someone finally made him pay, even if it cost them everything. They sat in silence for a moment, to women who'd lost too much. sitting in a battered ship hurtling through the void. We're going to prove Dante's innocent, Jessa said. It wasn't a question. Yeah, Mira surprised herself by meaning it. We are. And then we're going to make sure everyone knows what Voss really was. A sound from the doorway made them both turn. Dante stood there, thin and tired, but something in his face had changed. He looked less like a man waiting to die and more like someone remembering how to fight. You both believe me, he said, wonder in his voice. Believing you is easy, Mira replied, standing to get him a bowl of stew. Proving it to the rest of the galaxy is going to be the hard part. But lucky for you, I know someone on Novo Terra who specializes in impossible causes. Who? Jessa asked. Mira smiled, and it was sharp. A drifter named Tobias Reed. Used to be an investigator before he got too close to some truths powerful people wanted buried. If anyone has dirt on Voss's network, it's him. Above them, the ship's lights flickered, and for just a moment, Mira could have sworn she saw colors dancing in the air, warm oranges and gentle greens. Hope and Grat,